All right. Welcome to the May Armchair Botanist Forum, hosted by the Brit Ecology Herbarium. This month's this month's forum is called Springtime and Nowhere, a vibrant glimpse at a vanishing land few realize they've never seen, the Blackland Prairie. And this forum is going to be presented by our digitization technician, Natch Rodriguez. So let me go to the next slide. For those of you who haven't joined us before, this program is a collaboration among botanists, museum professionals, students, biodiversity informaticians, and you. These casual forums will serve as a space for questions and discussion on our current herbarium digitization.
Well, Fritz is the one that redid those.
And for dissemination of botanical knowledge from both presenters and attendees. So any comments, questions about today, you can reach us at our email at herbarium.brit.org. And today's forum goes along with our current National Science Foundation grant for digitizing all of our specimens from Texas and Oklahoma. So across all herbaria in Texas and Oklahoma, we believe we have about 1.7 million specimens. And several of you that are joining us today have been armchair botanists and volunteering with us and helping us actually transcribe these specimens. So Natch is going to take it away and telling you a little bit more about the Blackland Prairie, specifically talking about Clymer Meadow. And so maybe some of you have seen some specimens collected from this area. So we hope you enjoy it. I'm just going to kick it back to Natch to get us started. Thanks, you guys.
Awesome. Hello. Thank you, Ashley, and good morning. I want to give a little bit of introductory information first before diving into a little bit of a virtual walk with y'all in the latter portion of this, where y'all are free to chime in. And we'll take a look at some specimens and maybe even identify a few together. First things first, I want to introduce myself. I'm Natch. My pronouns are they, them, or he, him. I'm a herbarium digitization technician, which means I primarily work in making sure our physical specimens make it online into our databases, such as Torch. So I wanted to keep this slide here. Some of y'all may recognize it. It's from, I believe, the last armchair botany session we had that was about the way community scientists further scientific research. A lot of those ways are very similar to what I do with digitizing. And I also cannot understate how incredibly profound a resource public databases are for education. So as we go through our forum here today, I just want us to constantly be keeping these resources in mind and the relationship between fieldwork and observations to preserve specimens in a natural history collection. Next slide, please. I would like to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. The Brit and DFW likewise occupy land that frequently was host to many Native North American groups, including but not limited to the Delaware, the Chickasaw, the Waco, the Tauconi, the Heine Cato, the Cherokee, Comanche, and many more. And these nations are still present today, though often in diaspora outside of their ancestral lands, in large part due to colonization. Land acknowledgements are meant to be a beginning and not an end to a discussion, and especially when talking about this land as it used to be and the Blackland Prairie that used to be part of the sea of grass that was the Great Plains, it is very important to remember that human beings are very much part of this ecology. It can become very easy to feel that humanity is solely a destructive force. I've seen that sentiment, I know myself, many times. But in actuality, there are many ecosystems around the world that historically have been maintained by their first peoples and indigenous cultures and still are where possible. The prairies are a stellar example of this, what with cultural fires and that were set to move bison and also maintain grazing land by keeping the succession to forests at bay. Next slide. All right, so Clymer Meadow, we're here. What is Clymer Meadow? Clymer Meadow is a collection of remnant prairie land reappropriated by the Nature Conservancy to conserve the what remains of the Blackland Prairie. This project was started in 1986. So in terms of ecological restoration and recovery, or any ecological project, it's not that old. They have been buying up tracts of land over the years and actually recently acquired another portion. Remember, over 95% of land in Texas is considered privately owned. Clymer is considered currently the third largest unplowed Blackland Prairie remnant and the largest on vertisoil soils. These are clay heavy soils. Of the remaining some odd 5,000 acres of the Blackland Prairie, Clymer Meadow represents 29.5%, so nearly a third. Next slide. Out of the original roughly 12 million acres that once were the Blackland Prairie, those 5,000 total remaining acres themselves represent only 0.04%. Online, when you look up how much of the Blackland Prairie remains, you get the continual answer, less than 1%. But this seems to be the actual percent you get if you plug in the numbers that are available. And in any case, not good, not great. But we have hope. I know that in the social media post for this event, I wrote that somewhere between 80 to 86.8% remains of the Amazon rainforest. I don't want to imply that the Amazon is okay, because there are a lot of dynamic issues at play, and 20% loss is terrifying, especially when considering new research indicates that it's the most stabilizing part being removed first. But I instead wanted to make the numerical comparison only because I think most of us have grown up hearing how imperiled the Amazon is, but never hearing about the prairie. We have an Amazon basically right next door, and virtually none of us really hear it talked about in such dire terms. A lot of folks think a prairie is a field, and that if you've been a field, if you've seen a field, you've seen a prairie, but nothing could be further from the truth. And if you come to a remnant prairie, especially like Clymer Meadow, you can see that firsthand. You can see that it's up here to the northeast of Fort Worth, Dallas Metroplex area, kind of far out of the way. Yeah, you can see firsthand. It's, as I like to describe, it's like walking into a waist-high rainforest in terms of like diversity, both seen and unseen, floral, faunal, fungal, bacterial. There are more than 300 plant species alone at Clymer so far identified. It also is host to rare plant communities such as the eastern gamagrass, switchgrass, yellow Indian grass community on the flatter hilltops and lower areas, and the little blue stem, yellow Indian grass, big blue stem community on the drier slopes. And you'll see why there's different communities on slopes in shortly. Next slide. Getting this out of the way. So I've been saying remnant a lot. What does it mean? Simply put, a remnant prairie is generally said to be one in which the communities within it have been largely unaltered by colonial development. The plant community at Clymer is believed to be old growth, meaning if you went out there, you looked around, looked at your feet, you'd see largely the exact same composition of plant species you would not just hundreds, but potentially thousands of years ago. However, despite vast areas being unchanged, this doesn't mean there hasn't been any disturbance. And, you know, some disturbances can have positive effects, like when instead of tilling the whole area, nearby ranchers started using it for hay for their cattle. And the periodic grazing can make way for new growth. But other disturbances and their stories can be read if you look around the meadow. There used to be a house, not a horse, a house built at the top of one of the hills, for instance. But they now have a picnic area you can eat at after the tours. And there's this long plain cut road you can see here up on the top left that they maintain that leads up to that area so they can move their equipment in little vehicles and get across easier. And you'll see why on the next slide. There's also, unfortunately, a petroleum pipeline moving underneath, and if anything were to happen to it, there could be even more disturbance in having to rip open parts of the land, bringing in outside soil with potentially seeds of invasive grasses, etc., that sort of thing. But now there's also a great deal of water too, and with it, a lot of trees. Now, full-grown trees don't typically belong on a prairie, and they make great use of their volunteers to help cut them back. But at this point, many of the watery areas, like the retention pond, are kept around because they make for good wetland habitat as well. You can definitely, I know these images are static, but if you were to be here on any given day, you would hear lots of sounds. I think we even heard some frogs. I know it was mentioned that you can definitely hear frogs in the warmer seasons, definitely a lot of bird calls. And so now, besides the remnant prairie, Clymer ecosystems include woodlands, riparian areas, ponds, wetland, bottomland forest, which you can kind of see on the edges. And then again, more prairie restoration areas in various stages of recovery. And again, they really appreciate the work of the volunteers who make this all even possible. Next slide, please. So always remember to collect in duplicates. I think I've heard Tiana say that once or twice. That's just a little joke. This is my wife in the photo. She's helping me demonstrate the short distance height diversity of remnant prairies here. These pothole-like structures are everywhere as you try to make your way across a remnant prairie, and they are called gilgai. They are one of the most prominent, maybe even the most noticeable, I would say, sign that you are in a remnant prairie. But you do have to be inside the prairie to really notice them. Even from a distance, though, prairies aren't flat. They have hills, they have curves, and then within them, you have all sorts of microtopography like the gilgai. Gilgai are caused by the sink swell soils of the Blackland Prairie. Here at Clymer, I believe the topsoil can stretch 4 to 8 feet deep. Feet. That is very deep. And I don't even believe that that's even the deepest that prairie soils in general could go. And all of it is lush, living, dark, black clay soil that just loves to soak up the rains we get. And it's not erosion, as Brandon Belcher says, the gentleman who leads the management project of this land. There isn't any erosion here because of how thick the plant cover and their deep prairie roots go. So no, instead, it's the water that's sinking to the lowest point, and it tends to, as it tends to do, and it gets absorbed. So that part at the bottom swells, while the higher part remains drier and can tend to shrink. And this results in this pushing force that drives the earth upwards and creates the gilgai over time. And these are things that once destroyed, as with like the soil biome, microbiome, they are very hard to get back even after years of restoration. It is a project basically of lifetimes and very much worth so doing. While some gilgai can be significantly deep, even shallower and smaller ones will bear noticeable changes in the community. And this is fairly cool if you ever take a walk out here. It's not a static landscape. You can take one single step down or up, one step in front of you, and you can notice whole new plants that needed that extra moisture or dryness, or even somewhere specifically in between. And when you look across a prairie, if you start to get really good, you can even spot the parts of this tapestry where it sinks or rises by looking at the colors of the flowers or the grasses. Next slide, please. Awesome. So just as a demonstration of how important the water retention of gilgai are, yes, there are rushes, there are sedges, and there are even crawdads in many parts of the prairie due to the retention of moisture. I know one gentleman on the tour last in late April, where I took these, asked if the crawdads were edible. To which I didn't hear Brandon's response, but I would imagine so. But it does surprise people that like they're even there at all. Most people don't really think of crawdads as being on a prairie, but they are there fairly frequently. You can see their little mounds and their little holes everywhere as you walk. There are, and okay. So now we get to the latter half of this session. Next slide. Ah, yes, but they are hard to catch. And now we get to the later half of this session. This is where I was hoping to maybe experiment and try to mix it up and let it be more of an open discussion. I have several pictures, all from either the late April Clymer tour or from the Torch database, and we can move through them as quick or as slow as we want. But if you have anything at all to say or ask about these plants, or you want to share what you know, go ahead and just chime in like it's a roundtable. I want y'all to know that as a digitization tech with a background in ecology, not botany, I did my best to use Torch and INAP and tour information to identify these. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to hear any of y'all out there know more. So, does anyone know the common name for this? I didn't put the common names. I kind of left that out for like fun guessing. But if you know the scientific name, that's a major hint. This is native to the Gulf Coastal Plain in northern Mexico, hence the scientific name Tampicana. My parents are from Tampico, so this actually makes me really happy. It's in the Asteraceae family.
I love that Kimberly says that she should know this one. To me, it's just another yellow daisy. I don't know the common name. I'm so bad
Yeah.
with common names, but I know some people on here are probably more familiar with these.
If I remember right, I think this was ragwort, a type of ragwort. There are a lot of yellow asters, a lot, and they're all different. Yeah. Yes, exactly, Lisa. I was gonna mention that acronym.
I didn't want to use that word, but yes.
Yes, dang yellow composites.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Sure. Well, we can move on to the next one then. So you see, this one's the Rubus genus from the rose family. There are multiple types on the prairie. That will be the case for several of these, where there's several different species belonging to one genus, and some of them are very similar. So I wanted to take a guess, maybe Rubus flagellaris. Though obviously the only specimens that we have so far collected or put online is from Rubus trivialis. So anyone else have any like guesses? It is some type of dewberry. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm
These are
gonna
fun.
say the one you're talking about the big picture, right? The color, the
Oh
in
yeah, the
situ
live
picture.
specimens. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. The trick to Rubus, you caught me on my bad day. The trick to Rubus is trivialis is the only one that has little hairs on the stem, little glandular hairs. And if you look at the red stem on the picture, you can kind of see that it's fuzzy looking. And that's going to tell you that it's trivialis. Now,
Oh.
flagellaris has a bare stem, but is also kind of flat on the ground like Trivialis is. But Trivialis can also be bare, so they can be a little tricky. But I have to agree with Lisa; they all eat equally well. So
Yes, they do. They very
they're
much do.
delicious. Yeah.
They are everywhere about right now. My process personally for IDing these was actually I made significant use of the search function of Torch, actually probably equally, if not more so than INAT, because INAT's visual identification function has limitations, and you to get a sense of taxon, family, genus, species, I used INAT, but then I plugged it into Torch to confirm if anything in that genus had been found. Then I could use the specimen image to help narrow down the name significantly. And I actually found that even with my bad photos, there were several times I couldn't come close to being accurate. So me going to Torch, searching the genus, finding a species, then going back to INAT to confirm the species with live images turned out to be a really useful process. But obviously, I'm still not certain.
And Rubus is a tricky genus because even the taxonomists can't agree on how to classify these. So there's one group of taxonomists that say there's over 227 species in the United States, and there's another group that like to lump them together into about 25, which would put Texas with about 5 species. And I happen to be in the lumping group just for simplicity's sake. But that adds to the complexity of trying to ID. So it depends on which book you're reading at the time or which website you're visiting. So that's complicated. So if you can tease that out, you're doing a great job. I think you've done wonderful.
Awesome. Good to know. I wanted to share that process because I thought other people, I know we have a lot of INAT users, but I wanted to kind of plug Torch a little bit and offer it as like a supplement for identification. It really helps a lot. Ooh, we can move on.
I know Kimberly will love this one.
Yes, my favorite.
I know the genus is Venus's looking glass. There are multiple types though. Does anyone happen to know what type? I have this marked as clasping Venus's looking glass because of the way those leaves kind of curl back towards each other. You can kind of see it in the photos. Yeah, awesome, good. Next one's probably going to be maybe a little harder. Yeah, because not everything going out there was in bloom. I know I said I like to describe the prairie as like a waist-high rainforest, and in truth, it really is. But this was my first time going out so early in the prairie's spring season. So it's more like a calf-high rainforest right now. There's a lot of stuff out there, not all of it in bloom, but these leaves were so beautiful and I think so distinct. I mean, I think we can at least say for certain that it is a thistle. I wanted to say Engelmann's. The way that the spikes on the leaves kind of line up, you can see the little tiny points. I think kind of indicates maybe Engelmann's. Anyone else have anything to add? All right.
So hard
Oh,
without the flowers.
exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, and most times when a lot of times when people collect or when they take a photo for iNaturalist, it's usually with the flowers because that's ideal, but it does make trying to identify these a little harder. All right, we can move on. So Apiaceae family, I'm almost certain scientifically, I wanted to say Biflora americana. Oh, I forget what the common name for this was. I did look it up. Goldfinches love thistle. Yes, a lot of things love thistle. I love
Prairie
thistle.
bishop.
Prairie bishop.
Prairie bishop. This is a favorite of mine because it looks like the Pterilus arvensis at first glance, the nasty invasive one, but it's got these long wispy leaves that that make it not Pterilus arvensis, which stand out like the carrot family you mentioned.
Yeah, I think the leaves were the bit.
Yeah.
And you can see the flowers starting to come in there, though they're not full yet. So interesting. The next one's going to be one that I'm sure like a lot of you are going to know right off the bat.
I don't know. I've never seen that one before.
Yeah. So primrose, specifically Google. Yeah, Lisa. Thank you. Specifically, I think Google like to say pink lady, although you can see like they go from like pink to white, almost white here. And these are already in bloom, and we can see them along the sides of our highways too. Awesome. I just planted some on my hill. Oh, cool. Yeah. All right, well, we can move on. Next one, I believe, is also edible. Yeah, this one. Allumium canadense. It's sometimes interesting how the scientific name, I think, informs the common name, or if the common name informs the scientific name. Anybody recognize this? People on the tour really recognize this. I got a little bit confused, but Canadian onion. Yes, it does look like an onion. The common name calls it Canadian garlic. Yeah. I'm just reading the chat real quick. I want to keep up. Yeah, garlic. This was in the wetter areas, if I remember correctly. So just yet another example of how things differ from like height. All right, we move on. Blue-eyed grass. Blue-eyed grass genus. Oh, I shouldn't have said that out loud. I'm sure a lot of you know this one.
Yeah. This is another one that's real hard to ID down to the species.
Yeah, it is, because the flowers are not yet in full bloom. Although I was very interested to see that at least here on this specimen sheet, they don't seem to be in full bloom either. So made for a better comparison, I think, that way. Blue-eyed grass is one of my favorites.
I don't even know how many different Sisyrinchium species there are in our area. What are some of the other ones, Alan?
Well, I was just looking at some of my iNet observations, and most of them are not down to the species level just because they're so hard to ID down to that level.
I know I've seen some purple ones and some white ones. And I'm sure that there's several different varieties of the blue, different sizes of them, but I don't know the number of species either. There's a lot. Can we just say a lot?
Yeah.
Sisyrinchium is one of my favorite words to say too. Sisyrinchium.
Well, there's a sword-leafed one that's appears to be in this area.
That's a very fitting name. I can see that. All right, well, we want to move on. right, so ground plum, ground vetch. I think we've probably like all seen a lot of the vetch that's growing. It'll also grow in like yards and highways, but this is a different species, and these flowers are huge. They are massive. I think it's probably very distinct, if not by like the size of those flowers alone. But also, right now, you've got like these nice showy fruits here. And they are edible. Several of us did demonstrate that firsthand uh, during the tour last month. So you can kind of see the seeds inside the fruit.
That fruit is wild.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever seen that before.
Yeah. It had very much like a leafy, strong leafy taste to it too, as well. Mm. Yes, it does look like a grape. It does. Very much did not feel very firm though. So very much not like a grape in that respect, but they do look like grapes. They have this beautiful like reddish green color. Anybody else have anything they want to add on this one? They were crunchy. Yes.
Crunchier than a grape, Amy, or more grape-like crunch?
I would say they were crunchier than a grape. Than a grape. No. Awesome. Polytania. So anybody know the common name for this one? You can kind of see the flowers starting to come in, and you can see that nice umbra already in shape. So we're kind of lucky that this one I think is in a decent enough shape for identification, though obviously still have problems getting it down to species. Prairie parsley, yes, it is. Yeah, exactly. So on Torch, the only specimens so far uploaded for Clymer. By the way, yeah, all these specimens that I'm showing on the left, if you can look down at their labels, they've all were collected at Clymer, and these all are for the Brit. You can see the stamp up at the top. Oh, Kimberly just taught me yesterday. We saw a plant along the pollinator pathway. Awesome. Yeah. Torch
Well,
wants to.
I'm guessing that this is Texas prairie parsley,
Mhm.
Polytiana texana,
I
or
think
yours.
Clymer has both. Well, obviously you've got
Mhm.
the Natali here as well. I don't know how to tell the difference between Texana and Natalia.
Mhm.
So there's a fun, they look so identical. Texana is the more common one. So we kind of default to that. If you don't know, we would say Texana.
Yeah.
So whoever collected the Natalia is found a really good one. It's like Roger Sanders.
Yeah, I was also gonna say Texana, so
Yeah,
uh,
that's what I would guess.
I'm in good company, is what I'm saying. All
Yeah.
right, we can move on.
And yay, Anna, for remembering.
Mm. This is I know grasses are not a lot of people's speciality. This one was fairly showy, and I think at least the genus is fairly recognizable. The common name is probably even more so. Anyway. Yeah, well, this is barley. This is what I believe barley is. We can see here the comparison lines up pretty much exactly. You look at where like the leaves come off of the stem too as well. A very nice, lovely grass. All right, so we can move on. So I wanted to keep this one in here. This is the only Brits only torch specimen for this species, and as you'll notice, it's corrupted. So I thought I would share, because I'm not sure if y'all have come across this. Maybe you have. Doesn't happen often, but if you do a lot of plants, you're bound to see one. The specimen image on the left appears to be corrupted. And depending on where in the process this was caused, it may be fixed in different ways. But here is the label data that I copy and pasted here. And you can see that there was a note that the image is corrupt. Though I guess in order to get the label data, they must have had access to the specimen itself at some point. But on the right, that genus, anybody have like a common name for that genus?
Are these
These are
spurges?
Surges. Yeah.
Jinx, everyone.
Yes, these are spurges. And I wanted to say like reticulated seeded spurge. This is the same plant here, and you can see how long it is, and you can also see that really bright, showy red root. Was really disappointed I didn't get to see the specimen on this one, because I think a lot of times roots are often a little overlooked part of like collections, part of the specimen itself. And here I was hoping to see how bright that red turned up on the specimen sheet. All right. Purpurea.
One thing I was going to say about surges is there's the Euphorbia dentata, the green poinsettia. That's a rampant weed in yards and alleys and stuff in Dallas.
Oh.
It looks like a poinsettia because it's got little green berries at the top of it, just like a poinsettia would. But
I did not know that.
And
I'm sure you got some growing in the backyard.
And I can, when we get through these slides, I can find this specimen image for us. Sometimes our image at some, like Matt said, at some point, either at the image processing stage or at the point of capturing the image, every now and then the camera messes up or something messes up. So if you're ever searching the Torch database and you need to see an image and it comes up like this, you can always email us and we'll be able to send you a better version.
So we have Purpurea. A lot of different species of different genuses have that species name Purpurea, which I believe just means purple. Anybody know the common name? Yes, it is a paintbrush. It is a paintbrush. I want to say like prairie paintbrush, purple paintbrush, that species. Oh, I think I put the label a little low, but yeah, there you go. These are beautiful, large. I know I didn't show anything to scale, but these are very beautiful, very large, very much clustered together in little bright pink bursts across the prairie on occasion, and they're very lovely to see, and they wave wonderfully in the wind on those long stems. All right.
There's a lot of that out on the grasslands.
Who is there?
And I think there might be a few species of Castanea around here. But yes, I love these so much.
Well, yeah, there's the purple, there's the yellow.
Are there any other colors of paintbrush out there?
Well, of course, the red Texas paintbrush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I know along the road, the gravel road leading up, you can see some other types. Right now it was very early in the season, so what we got is like some red, some pink, some purple. If y'all ever feel so inclined, you should definitely consider like coming down and getting a tour or coming down on one of the walks that they host.
I love these too.
And these are absolutely gorgeous. And I think bumblebees love them as well. There's a reason for them having such a wide opening.
Well, and my understanding is they're buzz pollinators, so only the bumblebees can do that.
Very cool.
Regular honeybee can't really pollinate these.
Even the specimen is very pretty. The common name for this species is cobia beard tongue. I suppose that comes from the flowers, from the petals that you can kind of see hanging down. Very lovely plant, very lovely plant. It's everywhere right now, or was, might still be. All right, and next, so we're getting towards the end. There wasn't a specimen image for this from Clymer yet. That could mean several things. That could mean just a species wasn't collected, or it could mean that it was collected and it just hasn't been digitized yet. But the peak bloom is still to come. You can kind of see them already, but the peak bloom is supposedly in May. So if anyone want to chime in with what they feel like the common name is here?
Prairie larkspur.
Yes, larkspur. Apparently these can range from like blue to white, if I'm correct there.
Yeah, I was actually surprised at how white the flowers are. I love all the delphinium specimen sheets that we have because the blue always really retains so well from these flowers. So I'm surprised we actually don't have one from Clymer yet, but just means we need to collect.
There's a mission out there. So all right, we will move on to more things that are yet on their way. Going to peak in the next month or a couple months over the summer. We have some liatris, we have some sunflower, we have some basket flower. Brandon Belcher mentioned that there's at least one type of sunflower out there that should get taller than a person, 10 feet high even, which is pretty incredible. And I hope y'all get the chance to see that. Basket flower as well also gets pretty tall, but the flowers are massive and they are a big draw for pollinators. They're absolutely wonderful. They are one of me and my wife's favorite flowers. So here we can see some specimens that have been collected at Clymer, but these were not to be seen yet. At least in late April, we might be able to see it coming up on the June 3rd walk. And there's So here we have images instead of some specimens. These are more things like the thistle that weren't quite in bloom yet. We have some rosinweed. We have Echinacea, some purple, I want to say purple coneflower. I love that Dr. Seuss like stem on it. Yeah, purple coneflower. Awesome. Glad I'm in good company. All right. And so this is basically it for the talk today. The link at the top is awesome. Oh, thanks. The link at the top is just a link to a short video that one of my favorite things about the prairie when you go out is the way that the wind moves across it. And like I said, the prairie's not that tall yet, or it wasn't when I last went out. So the wave is not quite as dramatic as it otherwise would be, but it's still very, very lovely. And then the link at the bottom, I think we can post into chat. The link at the bottom is for if anyone out there is interested in taking a walk. Their May walk, their late May walk is already filled up, but there is an early June one that should have at least a lot of the same flora as well as new ones. It's called the Basket Flower Walk, Basket Flower Tour. So we get to see those nice, giant, vibrant purple blooms. And if you're interested, you just can follow this link and sign up. Right.
Thanks, Natch.
Mm-hmm.
This was awesome. I seriously it's on my bucket list. I've really been wanting to go to Clymer. It's crazy how many specimens we do have from there. And I'm glad that you were able to find good representative species for the stuff that you saw out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it did help you with some of the IDs for these.
It most certainly, it really, really did.
Yeah. We have just about less than 10 minutes left for our hour forum. And again, I know some of you have already been transcribing with us and transcribing our specimens. So I'll at least either open the floor for questions about Clymer or some of the species we saw today, questions for Natch, or if you have questions on our current crowdsourcing project, and any transcription questions, you are welcome to ask them and feel free to unmute yourselves.
So quick question, is Clymer entirely within Hunt County, or do you know?
I believe it is. I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure. I do know that whenever I look at specimens and whenever I look online at Google Maps, it tells me that it's Hunt County. I don't know that it has any part of itself reaching outside of that yet.
Yeah, and I'm just going to search our specimens just to see. But I feel like I've consistently seen Hunt County as well, but I could totally be wrong.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a favorite prairie field trip for our master naturalist class, is to go up there and let Brandon show us around.
I believe it. Sounds like he's a good tour guide too.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like all Hunt County from what I'm seeing right now. And at least online, we have 345 specimens from Clymer. That's pretty remarkable. And not too many. I was gonna see if we have any Sisyrinchium besides, I can't remember already which species. I think you had Pruinosum in your slide.
Yes, I did.
Oh, Campestre is another one. Let's see if there's an image for this one. And this is looking like yellowish flowers over here.
Mm-hmm. From the labels that list the description, it seems like they fade to yellow. I don't know, though someone else could correct me. I don't know that any of them start as yellow.
And that could just be a process, what happens once it's drying. I know colors don't always stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess, okay, this one actually says flowers white.
We're white.
And I'm just wanting to zoom in because you mentioned gilgai, and I hardly see that on labels, and I really don't think that I've kind of done my own research to really like understand what those kind of formations are. So I'm glad that you discussed that.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, just right here, that last sentence or one of the last sentences of this label, rare on highs of the linear gilgai.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, I guess, one of those species that is very specific to that, kind of micro habitat.
Yeah.
Super cool. So you
That
mentioned the house. Is the Chastain house the house that you're referring to?
it might be. I did not manage to write it down.
Yeah.
It was the only one mentioned on the tour though, so I think that could be it.
Yeah.
It was 70s, either constructed in the 70s or taken down at around that time. Yeah.
I am trying to see. What are you calling a prairie pothole? Can you spell it? Is that the gilgai?
The gilgai, yeah.
Oops,
So
I didn't send it in the right.
oh yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was about to spell it out loud.
And I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. That's how I would pronounce it. Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
well, my understanding is it originated in Australia. That's where the name comes from.
Interesting. One of the house was 70s, other house taken out in the 2000s. Cool. And I don't think you even mentioned any orchids, but I am seeing a few orchids on here too. I mean, there are what, over 300 species. So obviously we'd be here for a few hours if we went through all of them. But it's exciting to see the diversity there.
Um,
And I guess, I mean, I would definitely say for those of you that are interested in that walk, take a look at the torch portal beforehand before you go, or iNaturalist,
mhm.
and seeing what's going to be kind of blooming in flower around that time. Exciting. Milkweeds, they got a little bit of everything there.
Looks like the orchids, I think, were collected a little later in the year. If I
Yeah,
saw that correctly too.
let's see.
Yeah, just want to add about the walks really quick, because I know it was kind of difficult for my wife because she gets dizzy spells, but like because of the uneven surface, if that seems maybe a little daunting to anybody, the paved or not paved, but like the mowed portion, that little road that I showed earlier back at like one of the first few slides, is fairly even to walk across. They also have like a Kawasaki, with those little motorized vehicles. They have one of those that you can put any of your bags or lunches that you don't want to like carry around with you. You're not obligated to keep up with like whoever's leading the tour. You can kind of just roam around. You can take the easy way, and I'm sure if you really needed to and you just needed like a ride back, you could ride on the little vehicle that they've got. So there are other options out there. And there is like a picnic table at the front, and then there are more, like I said, like at the back on the hill.
So cool. And I
Mhm.
just have to look back at this map again. It's exciting that they're continuing to buy more land and expand
Mhm.
this. Because that's super important, especially in Texas, like you said, when most of this is private land. So it's really only going to be preserved if it's acquired by the right people who choose to, care for it in that way.
Yeah. And this is the map that Brandon sent to me. That's not available like online. But it is interesting to look at and just see like how, at least at the time that it was made, it's not consecutive. I'm not sure where the new acres that they purchased exactly are, where they would be on this map, but yeah, it's very interesting.
Thank you so much, Natch, for presenting on this. I know we've had some requests on specific environments like this in the Blackland Prairie. And I think there are a handful of other places in the DFW that may be Blackland Prairie remnants, but I'm sure this has to be the largest, at least in like the greater DFW area.
Oh yeah, at least in our area, I believe so.
I think the Frankfurt Prairie is one of the few that's remained native.
Really?
That's unplowed.
And where is that, Alan?
It's just off the tollway up in far north Dallas County, like on Frankfurt Road. That's the road to Frankfurt.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned going across the prairie with the utility vehicle, but down like at the Nash Prairie near Columbus, Texas, south in the coastal prairie. I mean, when we visit there, we have to actually brush off our shoes before we're allowed to enter. And when we exit, I mean, they clean everything because this is basically was a hayfield that was never under cultivation that they're really aware of. And so the immigrants, what is it? Stephen F. Austin's 300, I think, settled that area. And so it was always reserved as a hayfield. So they didn't really, I'm not saying that something didn't walk in things anyway, like the animals, but they're very picky about entering and exiting their property.
Yeah.
I don't blame them. That's probably a good thing, but that's interesting.
Well, and it's one of the few areas that still has the prairie potholes. There was some up on I-10 near Highway 99 in the Katy area when we were there it's been over 10 years ago, but they put in, I could see it from the highway when we drove over. We were up higher, that there were potholes there because they were holding water, but they put in office buildings. Those are gone now.
Wow.
Well, there's some gill guys up north of Whitesboro.
Oh, do they also have the pimple mounds though too? Because back down there they have both.
Yeah, well, they had those as well.
Yeah, and I've seen some pimple mounds in Red River County, so more and more north of us, but I have seen those before. And we will hop off soon, but our librarian, Anna, I'm just sharing what she shared in the chat. There is a exhibit at the Amon Carter this fall about the Blackland Prairie. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's
wow,
super cool. So if y'all haven't been to the Amon in a while, that might be something to look forward to. Amazing.
Yeah, they do disappear when they're plowed. That's one of the reasons that one of the great part of a definition for a remnant prairie is that it was unplowed, untilled.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did when we had the class out at Atwater, this is west of Houston, southwest of Sealy, and had people stand there and just look at the different elevations. You can see a change in the plants in just a matter of 6 inches to a foot.
It's wild how particular some species can be.
Yeah, you could definitely see that at Clymer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was one of the things that, like, when I first went, like, 10 or over 10 years ago, that like really stuck with me was just how complex and nitty gritty like a true prairie really is. Like, it is just such like a light bulb moment, really.
So many pockets of like diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to go far to see a ton of different things.
Not at all.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I am forgetting exactly the date of our next Armchair Botanist meeting, but it's typically the first Thursday of each month, second Thursday of each month at noon. So just check out the Armchair Botanist webpage for next month's meeting. Thank you guys. We'll see
Thank you,
you
Al.
next time.